Hello there, and welcome to another live chapter reading for Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Today I shall be reading from Eclipse Dancer by Laura Koerber. Chapter 1, Eclipse. Andy was surrounded by darkness and smoke. The smoke came from her cigarette. She held the butt up in front of her face and exhaled, the smoke making lazy spirals up and out into the warm, thick summer air. There was no one to watch her, no one to tell her that smoking would kill her. No need for her to reply, "Not dead yet." The darkness was the result of her eclipse glasses. Outside the tiny domain of the glasses, the day was glowing with light. Sunlight lay heavy and yellow on the grass, flickered silver green on the leaves of the oak trees along the property line, and burned hot and white on the gravel of the driveway. The sun itself was a harsh and glaring orb in a radiantly blue sky, but not to her. She was viewing the sun through her personal darkness and her smokescreen. She tipped the glasses up and checked her watch. About 45 minutes until full eclipse. She was out early. She wasn't as early as the fanatics and looky-loos that had gathered in town. Allenburg was an ant heap. The 4 motels were full, the 2 B&Bs were booked, and the campground at the state park was heaving with RVs. Locals were renting out their cow pastures to campers. The eclipse was the biggest event in Allenburg history, bigger even than the town's main tourist event, Alien Days. People were packed into the football field bleachers as if for a strange homecoming ritual. She thought about the crowd, that unusual mixture of hometown people and folks from all kinds of places. There was a couple from Holland and a news team from Norway. There were cars with license plates from California and Washington State. NASA was there flying overhead. Local, state and national news teams were there. Allenburg was ground zero for eclipse watching, the place where the sun, the moon and the view from the earth were all in perfect alignment. She wondered what the outsiders made of little Allenburg, with its fancy Gilded Age courthouse, the downtown that dated from the 1890s, and the neighbourhoods of cramped cottages and boxy ranch houses. Did the place look as dingy and mean to them as it did to her? A family home, a single wide on 5 acres, was about a mile outside of Allenburg. She'd grown up closer to the river than the town. The thump and blare of the high school band, muted by distance, wafted across the fields of corn on the hot summer air. She wondered if the cheerleaders were there, and if so, what were they cheering? Yay, sun, go moon, eclipse, eclipse, eclipse. Now. Andy grinned to herself. The townsfolk didn't know they were performing a botched and degraded version of an ancient pagan ritual. She checked her watch again. About 35 minutes. Yes, this eclipse event was way bigger than Alien Days. Alien Days only attracted a few hundred visitors, and most of them were Allentown diaspora, the young adults returning to see family and to show their hometown to their kids. The corner of Andy's mouth jerked down in a grim half smile as she thought about Alien Days. All those parents telling their kids, "This is where I grew up. See that drugstore? Your granddad opened that store, but he sold it when he retired. That's the house I grew up in. I was on the football team. I was a running back. No, we were a lousy team, actually." They told their kids about ice skating on the river in the winter and shooting at cans in the gravel pit, about picnics out at Fox Lake and fishing before the factory farm made the water toxic, deer and pheasant hunting, flying kites on the floodplain, all outdoor stuff. "Put your damn cell phone away," they'd tell their kids. Not much of interest ever happened in Allenburg. Central Iowa wasn't scenic, exciting or historical. No mountains for skiing, no white water on the Amiable River that meandered through the river valley, no Civil War or Revolutionary War battlefields, and no Native American historical sites. Allenburg was just a small market town in the Midwest, surrounded by puppy mills, factory farms and meth labs, and cornfields. Lots of gravel roads and lots of cornfields. So they'd entertain their kids with the old story about the shootout with the aliens that happened way back when. About 40 years ago, actually. No more than that. Andy did the mental math. She'd been 13 then, and she was 65 now, so that made it 52 years ago. 52 years ago. God, such a long time. Of course, nobody really believed that aliens had landed in Allenburg way back when. The oral history about aliens just provided an excuse to have a community party. It was a sweet party. Kids in costumes, silly contests, lots of food and crafts. People wandering all over town eating ice cream cones. It didn't offend her any more that the reenactment play, traditionally performed on a football field for the kick-off of the parade, depicting a family who's drunk in hicks. It was a hick town after all, and her mother had been a drunk. She didn't take the mockery personally anymore. Most people didn't even remember that she was the little girl who was supposedly saved from the aliens. Not saved, not aliens. The townspeople didn't know anything. They had no clue about what had really happened. Andy's fingers lingered on the arrowhead she wore on a string around her neck. Then she released the arrowhead and ground out her cigarette with a definitive twist of her wrist. She shoved the Eclipse glasses up her nose and told herself out loud, "Stop staring at the inside of your head and start looking out of your eyeballs at reality." Through her Eclipse glasses she could see that a big piece was missing from the sun, a smoothly rounded chunk. According to one version of an old legend, a wolf ate the sun, but no wolf ever bit that neatly. Someone got the story wrong. She checked her watch. 5 minutes. There was a burst of cheering from the football field and a crescendo of drumming, followed by a steady, heavy thump from the bass drum. She took her glasses off to look around her yard. Yes, the light had dimmed. Around the edges of the horizon, purple was leaching up into the darkening blue of the sky. The shadows of leaves on the grass made odd circle shapes interspersed with quarter moons of pale yellow. The effect was like light on water, as if her lawn was rippling shallows of a stream. It was time to let the moon shadows take her. Andy closed her eyes and relaxed back into a lawn chair. She breathed in and out deeply and slowly let herself melt into the darkness behind her eyelids. "Stop thinking," she whispered. "Listen to your breath." She heard the rasp of her exhalation echoed by a sweep of wind through the line of trees that edged the property. Somewhere far away a dog barked. She could hear the solid thump of the distant drum. Andy thought of flying. She imagined the air under her arms, her hair lifting and floating. She felt her heartbeat separate from the faraway beats and form its own rhythm, light, quick, a dancing thrum. When she opened her eyes, her yard was dark and her mood had lightened. She could feel the blood moving through her veins and her nerve endings tingling. Andy stood up and the horizon lifted with her. She let her gaze drift across the darkening landscape, and she was intensely aware of the vast expanse of dark air and the circle of purple sky. She was especially aware of the wide prairie of long grass that spread out around her from horizon to horizon, a green so dark it was nearly black. Her trailer had become an island surrounded by grassland. Not cornfields, grass, tall grass prairie, a sea of grasses, rushes, sedges and wildflowers undulating in the heavy and moist breeze. The town had vanished, drowned beneath the dark green waves. The sound of the band was gone, replaced by the heavy sigh of the wind. She was alone with the prairie, the trees and the river. Andy tilted her head and watched the sky, keeping her gaze just off the eclipse, just a sliver left. She inhaled deeply, her chest and shoulders rose and fell. The sliver of sun narrowed to a line and narrowed again to a star-like spot. Then suddenly the light exploded into a ring of fire in a black sky, a total eclipse of the sun, and Andy's heart filled with exultation. She lifted her arms and fanned out her fingers and arched her feet until she was on her toes. Then she gently rose up into the warm, dark air and began to dance. I hope you enjoyed this chapter reading and that you'll go check out the book. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.